Welcome back, everyone, to another incredible episode of Chat with Dan here. For today, what can I say? I'm already speechless and we haven't even started yet, just saying. We have on the show the incredible, the amazing, the badass, the superstar. She's back. The one and only, the legendary Brittany. Brittany, how are you today?
I'm doing well. Thanks so much for having me back.
Absolutely. What better way to have an incredible, super badass Wednesday than to be chatting again with someone as badass as you? You know what I mean?
Thank you. It's good to chat with you too.
Absolutely. Now, if you're new to the channel, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, follow. It helps a lot. But also, in the description below, you're going to find all of Brittany's social media. By this point, you should know why she's super badass. In case you're not, the good thing is that every single time she keeps raises the bar on how badass she are. So this is going to be an episode like that, pretty much. And without further ado, let's jump in. So I want to start, this whole conversation by throwing out the first question, which is, how much of yourself do you bring into your characters? And do you find pieces of your real personality slipping into roles? Or is it more like fully separate yourself?
Yeah, I think it will definitely depend on the role and exactly who this person is. But for me personally, I definitely always find a little bit of me in the role. I find that really helps to ground me in a lot of the characters that I do, just because I think that no matter the genre that you're doing, whether it's a comedy, whether it's a drama, whether it's a horror, whether it's anything, these people need to be real. And I think by, bringing a little sense of me, even that if that's just the tiniest sliver of something, I find that really helps ground and keep these characters feeling very real and authentic, even if they're in very ridiculous circumstances.
And have you ever taken on a role that changed the way you see yourself or even of the world at the same time? And how did that impact you somehow?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that that's one of the beautiful things about being an actor is the fact that we open ourselves up to be changed and to take on these new perspectives and to be able to see the world through a different lens. And I think that by having that opportunity, it allows us to really grow and to develop ourselves. And I think that that's always something that I've appreciated about being an actor is being able to really take a beat and take a moment after, a show wraps or after, you come home from being on set and being able to be like, wow, I'm back to being me, but I also can bring this fresh light and fresh perspective based on who I just was for the last 8 hours.
Okay. And do you think acting can reveal kind of hidden parts of an actor's personality, or is it more stepping completely outside of yourself?
I think sometimes you can be surprised by how much you relate to a character that maybe you didn't think that you did. I remember I did a short film in which I played like a very tyrannical boss. And I was like, oh my God, I am not like this character. She's a hard ass. She's emotionless. Like there's nothing that I am like. And then when it actually came down to like being on set and working with the director and working with the other actors, you just kind of go, oh no, like there is a little bit of humanity here. And maybe there is parts of me that is like this person. And that doesn't necessarily make it a bad thing. But I think it is about, again, just that idea of being open to who these people are and, where you might find yourself being more similar than you think. And that's not always a bad thing.
True, and I think that is also kind of a good, like a cool thing about films, that us, the audience, we can get the chance to see those type of emotions. You know what I mean? See these type
Mhm.
of characters, see these type of actions. That someone is taking, because it's so interesting that like once you're thinking about, like, nobody thinks it's the villain of their own story. You know what I mean? And when you apply
Yeah.
that to your life, you can sometimes see how many times you took a decision that you thought that it was the right thing to do, but maybe for some people thought that you were being a dick, for example, or things like that. So I find it amazing about films that they can get us a chance to kind of see more about it. And I think as an actor, you can also get the chance to explore those type of emotions, but in a safe environment, without having to actually affect someone. Let's say, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it goes back to a little bit of what we were talking about earlier of just being able to, be open to that can shift your perception. And I think it opens you up as well to how does this shift the perception of how I interact with the people around me? If somebody is in that position and they're behaving that way towards me, does it change the way that I see them? And I think it also just changes the way that you approach future characters to be able to say, not only what can I take me of myself, Brittany, into this role, but oh, maybe there's a little bit of this character that I played or a little bit of that character that I played. And you can really start to paint these interesting pictures more and more as you get more things underneath your experience belt.
Totally, totally. And tell me, some roles, demand kind of deep emotional investments. So how do you protect your own mental and emotional well-being when you're about to portray, let's say, intense character somehow?
Yeah, this was, I think, a really big lesson for me to learn as I grew. I think, especially as I started doing more film and TV work instead of just theater work, which is how I kind of started my acting career, was doing theater. And when you're kind of doing theater work, you're very immersed in it, right? You're feeding off the energy of the audience. It is this very like deep emotional well that you can kind of dwell in. But a lot of film work, you don't have the luxury of that, right? Like we're filming this scene and you just got to be in it and then you got to be out of it. Or we're filming this really, really intense scene that happens at the very end of the movie. And then right after that, we're going to film this really happy scene that happens at the beginning of the movie. And you have to be able to shift your emotions quickly. And so I think for me, something that really helped was just doing a little bit of like grounding exercises of making sure that I gave myself separation, whether that's breathing exercises, whether that's taking a moment to like meditate before or after a scene, or even just like stretch my body. I found that that really helped kind of break me out of like any emotional turmoil that I was feeling by just like sometimes I just like will walk around like a set and just be like, I just need to move my body a little bit and then I'll feel a little bit better. But I think that that is always really important for me because it not only helps in the moment on set, but it also helps to be able to kind of break away when you go home at the end of the day of just saying, you know what, I'm just going to listen to some chill music or I'm going to listen to an audiobook. I'm going to break away from this and that way I can go home and, feel a little bit better.
Hmm. And have you ever struggled to disconnect from a role after filming?
Oh, definitely. I think that that's where a lot of these lessons come in to be learned. And I think that especially for a lot of folks who spend long days on set, like even if you're doing something very nice and very happy, like it is very emotionally exhausting. So I think that making sure that you take that time and that you have whatever your routine is to be able to separate one from the other is really important to start to develop, and it's going to look different for everyone. But I think the sooner you can tap into what that line of separation is for yourself, I think that that's really helpful.
Okay. And is there a moment where you felt like acting and real life kind of blurred together?
I think definitely. I think especially characters that really do feel like yourself, right? Like I think it's a little bit easier for me, at least personally, to disconnect from the characters who feel very different from Brittany, right? But I think the characters that feel similar to me, or I've even worked with filmmakers who have written roles like specifically for me or with me in mind. I think sometimes those scenarios are a little bit harder to disconnect or sometimes even reflect on of, this is not how I have done this situation in the past. Hey, here's a breakup scene that you have to do. And all of a sudden, emotions from something that happened to you years prior come into it, and I think it's beautiful. And I think that that helps gives authenticity to the moment. But sometimes it becomes hard to like shake it of like, oh man, I'm all of a sudden feeling these really real emotions for something that I thought I had already emotionally processed, but that just come up again because of, this particular thing that this role or this scene demanded.
And have you ever felt pressure to maintain a certain persona in public because of a role or even because of industry expectations?
Yeah. I mean, I am not attending the Oscars. I'm not like such a well-known actress that, there is this huge public persona perception. But I think especially recognizing that like the industry is small and how you behave in certain ways absolutely could trickle to a casting director or to a film director or anything like that. I think that there is sometimes a certain perception of I need to make sure that I'm always on in public, or if I'm attending a networking event, that I'm really bubbly and engaging. And I think that that is sometimes a pressure that we as actors put on ourselves because so much of our career is out of our control. And so I think that we try to really grasp onto the things that we feel like we can control. And I think how we present ourselves in public is part of that kind of hope for control. And so I think it's challenging because if you're always on, then how do you turn it off and how do you separate? Same idea as walking away from being on set is how do you separate it? But then also, how do you present your true authentic self? Not everybody is always going to be very energetic or very bubbly. And how can you still feel like yourself, even if you're maybe not able to be that or to do that all the time?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, we all know that at some point you're gonna be on the Oscars. That's obvious, right? I mean, whenever that happens, I'll be like, yeah, I know it.
Obviously.
Come on. She's gonna win Best Actress. Yeah, I knew it.
I love it. Speak it into existence.
Totally, totally. And social media also adds like another layer to this conversation. And do you feel actors today have to kind of perform even their personal lives to stay relevant somehow?
I think that social media is probably the biggest blessing and the biggest curse for actors in this modern day. It's a blessing. That's how Dan and I got connected is he saw me posting on Instagram and said, "Hey, I'd really like to speak with this person." I've worked with people who saw my information on social media and said, "Hey, I'm auditioning for this project. Would you be interested?" So social media can absolutely be a big blessing. And there are actors out there who are generating content and able to help pay their bills with what they're doing on social media. But I also think that it can sometimes be a curse because very similar to what we were just talking about, is there is this perception of perfection. And we as actors oftentimes, and I'm 100% guilty of this, post the wins, but don't always post what the struggles are. We don't want to say, "Man, I'm having a slump and I'm really struggling," or "The auditions that I'm getting are not exciting to me." And everyone experiences them. But when you only see yourself or others posting on like, "Oh, got an audition for this," or "Oh, book that," or "On set doing this," it can create a false sense of reality. And I think that it can internalize for us a little bit more of, "Man, am I failing because all these people around me are succeeding?" And it's like, no, everyone is feeling that way sometimes too. But sometimes we just want to share the good a little bit more than we want to share the bad. And so I think that that comes into this persona of I have to present myself in a certain way to be successful. But also, how do I make sure that I'm also taking care of myself and my community around me by being mindful of how I post too?
I always believe that it's important to have kind of your private life separate to it because, let's face it, is where you regroup, right? Where you
Mhm.
kind of seek refuge, where you kind of take a break in order to continue moving forward. At least what I've been doing is to keep that thing kind of a little bit aside to it. Sure, I can share some stuff every now and then, but at the end of the day, with friends, family, I tend to keep that like very precious kind of to me only. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So. And it's a shame that it's not a shame, but it's interesting how sometimes either an actor can go like extremely the opposite and actually show every single aspect of their lives, which is, maybe they do that because at the same time we do think that with social media, as you were saying, that somehow we have like this sense of engagement of we want to know what is going on here, right? We want to know more about it. So,
And I think that it's hard because everyone has different opinions too. You know, you'll talk with some people who are like, you should post everything because the more content you're putting out or the more you're just on people's timelines, the better. Others really have the opinion of you want to be very thoughtful, you want a very curated social media, you want to be very intentional. So I also think it is a little bit, very similar to what we were talking about earlier with like, how do you find routines on set? I think that you also have to find what is right for you on social media because it is not a one size fits all. And social media can be very overwhelming, it can be very toxic. So I also think it's about finding something that is going to fit well with you. And it is a great platform. It's a great place to network. I think, especially if you're an actor who's not in a large city or you're an actor that is just starting out, it's a great place to be able to find community. But I also think it is always about finding ways to take things with a grain of salt and make sure that you are not putting yourself into a harmful situation mentally just by doing social media.
There you go. I like it. And how does physical transforming for a role, weight changes, stunts, training could affect a personal life and well-being of an actor?
Yeah, I think this is always a hard one to struggle with. And I haven't ever had to do anything super, super extreme for a role. You know, I know there's actors who have had to like really like be super buff for a role or lose a lot of weight or gain a lot of weight. But I have had to do experiences where I've like had to change my voice or my mannerisms or the way that I walked to embody a character a little bit more. And I think that the more physical you make a character, obviously, I think the more that you sink into it. But I also think the more physical you make a character, the harder sometimes it is to shake. I remember I played a character once who had a very, very deep voice, and that was very different for me. And I found myself not shaking that as much when I would walk away from it. And I found my voice just sitting really low in a register for a long, long time. And it's very easy for me now to slip back into it. And I really had to mentally like say, like, Brittany, this is not your natural speaking voice. Like, stop it, get out of it. Again, do vocal exercises, do warm-ups, do cool downs when you leave set, but like you have to be able to walk away from it because I know that there are actors out there who have taken these physical changes who have not been able to shake it so easily or have been had to have, vocal, restoration or things like that because they weren't able to fully get out of it. So again, I think it's just about really making sure that you're getting back to you at the end of the day.
Yeah. And do you think there's like a limit to how much an actor should sacrifice for a role, let's say, or is fully immersion part of the whole craft?
I think this is so personal. I think that fully immersing yourself in a role, or, I think especially if you're playing somebody of like historical significance or somebody who was a real person, like being as authentic to them as you can be, I think is a really beautiful and wonderful thing. But at the same time, like, this is a job. We are actors. This is something that we are choosing to do. So I think that sacrifice may be part of it, but I also don't think it does yourself any help to lose who you are just to perform a certain role. And, again, if you're Austin Butler playing Elvis and you want to be in that for your full 3 month shoot and you're willing to do that, like, more power to him. Like, that is his personal choice. But I think that that's what it always should be, is your personal choice. And if you're willing to do that, go for it. But I think it's always important to make sure that you're not losing sight of this role will end at some point, and who am I going to be on the other side of it? And am I okay with what that looks like, based on what I've done so far? And I think if the answer is yes, then go for it. But if you think in any way it's going to negatively impact you, I think that you should really be mindful of that.
Totally. I mean, at the end, at the end of the day, it's a job.
Yeah.
So it's understandable that at the same time you need to make sure that your personal life doesn't get too affected to it, because actually, yeah, we have seen it multiple times with actors that they go the extra mile, and somehow we will see, like, in their public life or in interviews or whatever, that pieces of that character still sparking here and there.
Mhm.
So yeah.
And it's great. And it can be a very beautiful thing. I spoke earlier on the beauty of finding yourself in these characters and also taking a little bit of these characters with you. I think it can be really a beautiful thing to have a character influence who you are and what you bring to the table. But also at the same time, like you said, it's a job. And if you can't separate yourself when that job is over, or if it, doesn't isn't going to bring you joy after it ends, to me, what's the point? I think we are in this because it is so beautiful and because of that, but it is also who we are. And at the end of the day, you need to be able to stay true to yourself.
And how your personal relationships respond to the emotional intensity of your work.
I feel very, very fortunate to have a great network around me who understands what this work is. My partner is a writer and a comedian, so they understand what performing is. I have a great network of friends who are actors. And then I also have a great network of friends and family who are not actors who just get it. And so I feel very, very blessed for that. But I think if you are somebody who does not have a support system around you, who understand what performing is or what actors do or how intense our days can be, I definitely recommend educating these people and kind of giving them a glimpse in. I am very fortunate that my husband knows that when I come from home from being on set, I'm going to emotionally crash. Like you are on, you are doing it all day. Like I cannot just come home from being on set and be like, okay, honey, time for me to make dinner. Let's go do laundry. Let's go see friends. Like he understands, like when I walk in that door, I'm washing my face, I'm putting pajamas on, and we are chilling the
Yeah.
rest of the day. And I think that if that's what you need when you come home from set, being able to explain that to a roommate or to a partner or to the people that you surround yourself with, I think is really, really important and is what helps you kind of reestablish you at the end of the day.
What can I say? I mean, you never cease to amaze and to raise the bar. I love it. I love it. It's true. I mean, at the end, it's as we were saying before, right? I mean, it's a job, and at the same time, um, and I mean, I have discovered that you can actually that sometimes getting emotionally tired can hit you more than being just physically tired. Let's say,
Mhm.
right? Because I mean, there's something about it that yeah, sometimes you just want to after a long day to be like, you know what, I'm out. Don't want to do basically anything, and that's fine because that's your kind of process for you to kind of regroup to kind of reset so you can continue moving forward the next day. So yeah.
And some people are totally the opposite. Some people get so hyped. They're so excited by, it gives them energy and they need to go out and need to go burn calories. They need to go for a run. They need to go out to dinner with their friends. Like that's totally fine and beautiful too. And that's why I say I think it's really about identifying like what is going to feed my soul, what is going to feed my energy, what is going to help reestablish me in quote unquote the real world. And for me, it is chilling, it's doing nothing, it's just taking a moment to reset. But if you're the opposite, then also explain that of, hey, I was pretending to be somebody else all day and I need to come home and be around my people who are going to help me feel more like me. That's great too. But I think just make sure that you're kind of clearly communicating like what your wants and what your needs are with the people around you, just so that they can know what to expect.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And has playing like a certain role ever changed how you navigate relationships or communicate in real life?
Yeah, definitely. I think especially if you are somebody who has a partner, a boyfriend, a girlfriend, a husband, a wife, whatever it might be. I think first and foremost, communication with, is there anything that this role is doing that might make that person uncomfortable? Maybe there is romantic something. Maybe I murder somebody in in a show and that's really going to affect them personally to see me being really mean or really harsh or abusive or anything like that. So again, I think it comes down to a lot of communication and how may if I am doing a movie where I'm playing a really terrible, mean, awful character, it might take a little bit more for me to shake it out and making sure that I'm communicating with my partner of, hey, I'm going to be playing this really awful, terrible character. If I'm mean or if I'm like seeming like I'm still in that mental mindset when I come home, will you please make sure to tell me so I can course correct or make sure that we get on the same page? Or if I'm playing a really emotional, vulnerable, maybe I've been crying on set all day, or it's been a very, very emotionally heavy something, like I want to make sure that I'm communicating that so that way, my partner doesn't think, oh my God, I've done something wrong. They're being very emotional or anything like that. So I think it definitely can and should change the way that you communicate and how you work with your real life relationships. Because I think the more that you can have that strong communication with the people around you, the more of a support system and a safety net you'll create for yourself.
What's the best piece of advice you have received on maintaining a healthy balance between acting and personal identity?
As I was thinking about this question, I really had to reflect because I think that the idea of like maintaining, how do I maintain the balance of me versus the character, or how do I do, bounce back and forth? I think that that's not often something that's talked about in acting class, or it's not really thought of as like a big topic. We think on like, how am I going to be in this character? What are the script notes? What does the script tell me? How does this character do this? But like, we don't often think about like what happens when the camera stops rolling. And so some of the best advice that I've gotten is just to figure out what is your reset button. Because if you have ever been on set, if you know anything about acting, acting is a lot of waiting and acting is a lot of quick changes and going back and forth between things. So you may be doing a very, very emotional scene, and then they're going to do a quick camera change, and all of a sudden you need to be doing something totally different. You're really happy in one scene, and then right after you're sobbing, crying, and you need to be able to kind of switch back and forth. And then when you're done sobbing, crying, you need to be able to go home and hang out with your friends. So I think really the most important thing and the thing that I've really tried to embody is what is going to be the thing that resets me, right? In what could take 10 seconds to just get me back to a neutral state. And whether that's, I'm going to do a little bit of mindful breath work. I'm going to do a quick 60-second meditation. I'm going to do 10 jumping jacks. I'm going to snap my fingers 10 times and just do a shakeout. Like whatever it is that can just kind of blank slate, clean slate your mind into a more neutral state. I think if you can discover what that is for yourself, that's really, really going to help you on set and also going home from set for sure.
There you go. Totally. I like it. And this episode is about to be over, right? So my last two questions would be, what do you think that would be like the best quote to finish this whole conversation?
Yeah. For me, I think that the biggest thing that I would want to communicate from this conversation is be yourself. I know that acting feels so immersive and it's so beautiful and it's so great to be able to be in this profession and to be able to share our it takes and our interpretations of characters with the world. But you always, always should stay true to you, because if you are inauthentic, if you are not feeling a role, or if you are not feeling something, like that is okay. We don't have to be chameleons for everyone. We don't have to say yes to everything. We don't have to people please. And I think that especially for young actors earlier in their careers, it's easy to just want to say yes to everything. But it is okay to figure out who you are, what is important to you, what boundaries that you want to set for yourself. And I think just be authentic and be yourself, and the world will open up so much more than you could realize once you start doing that. I think that there's this great quote of, you might be the sweetest, juiciest, best peach in the entire world, but you're still going to run into people who don't like peaches. And I think that that is so true. And I think that you will be shocked and amazed by when you show up as your authentic self on set, in front of casting, with other actors, how much people gravitate towards that. I think people can really sniff out inauthentic people. I think people can really sniff out when you're just doing something just because you think that this is what people want from you. And I think the sooner you just go, you know what? I'm not going to care what casting thinks that they want. I'm just going to do what makes sense for me. And if they gravitate towards that, great. And if not, they're going to find somebody amazing for the role. And if that's what they're looking for, then I'm probably not the right person for the role. And that's okay. We're not going to get everything. Rejection is definitely a big part of this industry. But I would rather be rejected for being my authentic self than to be accepted for something that I'm really not.
And my last question here, so we can all enjoy and relax after an epic chat here. So, what do you think that could be the best title for this episode?
Ooh. I think a good title might be like finding yourself in your acting, right? Or being an authentic actor, finding joy in returning to yourself.
There you
uh,
go.
because again, you're never, unless you're like the rare bird who's going to be on doing the same role on Broadway for 30 years or something like that, like it's always going to come to an end. And stinks when that happens, but you have to be prepared for what happens when this character goes away because they will eventually go away. And so I think being able to say, how do I return to who I am? How do I, stay true to who I am on set and off set, I think is such an important lesson to learn as an actor.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. I like it. I like it. I mean, at the end, what can I say? The fact that you are keep killing it out there, you keep rocking, you keep shining, that is super cool. That is incredibly bad. That is incredibly badass. But hey, besides doing that, you're also showing us that dreams can come true, and also that you can have fun in whatever you're pursuing. That it's all about being you and all of that. I mean, I think that is also like a powerful message, and also, it shows us that you can have fun, you can be happy, and I think that is super important to follow, especially now in this crazy day and era we currently live in. The fact that we can rely on people like you who are kicking ass out there and who are shining to it, that is incredible.
Thank you. It's a really wonderful place to be. It's really it is just magical to be able to share your art with other people and have them appreciate it. And, thankful to people like you, Dan, who, elevate, I think, especially small indie creators and actors, because we're out here and we've got stories to tell, and, we're doing the dang thing. So
Totally.
appreciate it too.
Thank you. And that's the thing here. I've said this before in a few episodes that at least to me, I don't care if if an actor has, I don't know, 100 followers and another has like 1 million followers. I mean, at the end, it's every story deserves to be told. And you can learn at the end. You can learn so many things from somebody who has 10 followers, from someone who has 20,000 followers, right? I mean, at the end, everybody knows something you don't. And I guess when you open your mind to it and you actually want to learn about those stories, you also get the chance to learn more about yourself. That is something that I have kind of discovered over the past few years that I've been working with this platform. The fact that I can say that sometimes there are so many stories and so many things that an actor might say that I kind of relate somehow and be like interesting, and things like that can actually help you, or at least has helped me to continue improving and to becoming kind of this very version that I want to become at some point. So yeah, at the end, it's also thanks to you guys. I mean, without you, I wouldn't have a platform. So
Yeah.
and I do want to thank also those who stayed the whole episode. Let us know what you think in the comments below. But also, by this point, you should know why Brittany, she's super badass. So let's follow her. Let's continue making her viral. Hashtag Team Brittany. And again, thank you for making this happen. Keep shining out there. Keep kicking butt. Keep rocking. And I'll be seeing you in the next one.
Thanks so much, everyone.